Y&R Spoilers reveal Mariah's bold decisions about her love affair with Tessa. Has never been smooth sailing, as waves of romance continue to rise, pushing relationships that seem to have been firmly built into a new whirlpool of challenges. The atmosphere in this city is always thick with secrets, suspicion, the desire to be loved and the fear of loss, where lifelong vows always seem fragile in the face of temptation and unexpected events. The biggest change is probably coming to Mariah and Tessa, the couple who have overcome many storms to come together but now have to face the harsh challenge of Mariah's betrayal. Although Mariah always shows the image of a loyal wife, devoted to her family, behind her business trips away from home, she hides a big secret that even she herself does not want to face. The atmosphere in Mariah and Tessa's shared apartment grew heavier as their conversations became shorter and their intimate gestures became less frequent. Tessa realized something was wrong but didn't want to ask directly, for fear of hurting the person she loved. Tessa was a patient person, but the feeling of being excluded from Mariah's inner world hurt her more than any bitter words. The insecurity kept gnawing at her, making Tessa sometimes doubt herself, wondering if she wasn't good enough or if her love wasn't strong enough. But the fear of being abandoned couldn't stop her from wanting to know the truth. After many sleepless nights, Tessa decided to gently mention Mariah's recent business trips. However, Mariah only answered with general stories, absolutely avoiding what really happened. Mariah's coldness made Tessa even more suspicious and miserable. The distance between the two of them grew like an unhealable crack. But then, fate brought Daniel into Tessa's life at the time when she was at her weakest. Daniel, who used to be a good friend to both of them, now became an unexpected support when Tessa needed to share and listen. Daniel had just gone through a difficult period in his personal life, so he understood Tessa's pain. The conversations that lasted all night, the accidental touches of hands, the encouraging eyes, were all like a sedative, helping Tessa find herself again. But at the same time, that closeness was also a smoldering fire, easily flaring up at any time when the wounds in the marriage had not been healed. Perhaps, deep down in her mind, Tessa never thought she would betray Mariah, but the prolonged loneliness and the feeling of being pushed beyond the boundaries of love gradually weakened her heart before Daniel's sincerity. Meanwhile, Mariah was torn between guilt and the fear of losing Tessa. She knew that every lie would only further damage the relationship, but she didn't have the courage to confess. Every day when she came home, Mariah had to struggle between keeping the secret or bravely speaking out so that they could face it together. But in the end, avoiding it only pushed her further away from the wife she loved the most. Mariah's loneliness not only came from the mistakes she made, but also from the feeling that she was no longer the number one priority in Tessa's heart. Mariah began to doubt whether that love was really big enough to forgive or if everything had fallen apart since the moment she made the mistake. As soon as Mariah realized that things were getting out of control, Tessa sought comfort from Daniel, turning a small wound into a deep, hard-to-heal cut in both of their hearts. Even though she knew everything would eventually come to light, Mariah became more and more unstable, often snapping for no reason, creating distance to protect herself from her partner's wrath. But that defense only made Tessa more heartbroken, pushing her towards Daniel faster. With Daniel, Tessa no longer had to be careful with every word, no longer had to live with the feeling of being abandoned. Daniel was not only a listener, but also a person who encouraged her to be true to her feelings, encouraged her to dare to face Mariah to find the answer for herself. Gradually, the bond between Tessa and Daniel became tighter, surpassing the boundaries of simple friendship. It was a cruel cycle, when Mariah's coldness pushed Tessa closer to Daniel, and Tessa's closeness to Daniel made Mariah feel even more betrayed in her own home. However, Adam continues to prove himself worthy of Chelsea's trust. He constantly shows his determination to oppose his father, from quietly sabotaging Victor's plans to silently protecting Chelsea from invisible dangers. Every time Adam chooses to side with Chelsea instead of the Newman family, her trust grows, even though she still has doubts. But in Genoa City, nothing is certain, especially when Victor always knows how to use family affection as a sharp weapon to achieve his goals. There are times when Chelsea feels like she is standing on the fragile line between love and betrayal, when any thoughtless action of Adam can push her into a dangerous spiral. However, Chelsea is determined not to let fear control her forever. Instead, she chooses to give Adam a real chance to prove her love and loyalty. Every time Victor appears with the promise of making amends for all the mistakes of the past, Chelsea remembers what Adam did for her. Trust is gradually rebuilt, but with it comes caution, because Chelsea knows that in Genoa City, everything can change overnight. Her love for Adam is not always strong enough to fight an empire, but she believes in the ability to overcome adversity if the two are united. In a world where every promise can be betrayed, where secrets are buried deep under the cover of smiles and elaborate lies, only the truly strong hearts can stand. Mariah and Tessa are forced to face the painful truth that sometimes love is not enough to erase all wounds, but it is also through love that they learn to forgive each other and themselves. Chelsea, in the midst of the Newman family's never-ending power struggle, has found strength in faith and patience to maintain their fragile happiness in the face of the upcoming storms. Genoa City continues to revolve at its own pace, where romantic reforms will continue and test all the limits of faith, love and loyalty. Couples who seem to have hit rock bottom still have a chance to be saved, as long as they are brave enough to face themselves and each other, to once again step out of the darkness, towards the light of truth and hope. The storms in Genoa City do not stop at personal events, but also spread, deeply affecting the entire community of people who seem to have nothing to do with each other. After all the arguments and tears, the characters still have to move on, dragging along the baggage of unspoken secrets, buried wounds, and smoldering ambitions. It is this hidden connection that makes every relationship in the city more complicated than anywhere else. Mariah, after confessing her mistakes to Tessa, seemed to be freed, but in fact it only began a series of days more unstable than ever. The atmosphere in their apartment could never return to the peace it had before. Forgiveness, even when spoken, still did not erase all doubts and hurts. Tessa tried to open her heart, reminding herself of the beautiful moments of the past, but the image of Mariah and the secret of betrayal kept lingering like a ghost, making all efforts to heal tired. That pain unintentionally pushed Tessa closer to Daniel. When the whole city knew about it, only Daniel did not judge, did not criticize, just quietly shared his loneliness and disappointment. Every time Tessa felt like she was about to collapse, Daniel appeared as a gentle support, a short-lived shelter from the storm in her heart. That sympathy was initially just friendship, but as time passed, mixed emotions began to appear, especially when Daniel was also facing many difficulties in his own life. Loneliness drew the two souls closer together, each look, each gentle touch, each word of encouragement gradually turned into a secret fire that both of them deliberately avoided. Mariah realized this change faster than anyone else. Small signs like Tessa's absent-mindedness, distant eyes, reluctant smile, all hit Mariah's eyes like broken pieces of mirror. Pride made it difficult for Mariah to admit that she was losing her place in Tessa's heart, but feelings of insecurity and jealousy gradually invaded her mind. She began to watch, silently observe Tessa's every move, punishing herself for pushing her beloved wife into the arms of another. The more Mariah tried to hold on, the more she suffocated Tessa, pushing her further away. Each explanation became a new cut, each attempt to mend the gap that could not be filled. It was not only a loss of trust, but also a fear of being replaced, an obsession that all her efforts were in vain. Daniel was not immune to that emotional spiral. He knew the boundaries of friendship and love, but could not resist the sympathy and desire to make up for Tessa's loss. He was torn between his responsibility to his friends and his own selfish desires. Every time he saw Tessa in pain, Daniel felt guilty, but it was also in those moments that he realized his heart had skipped a beat. His feelings for Tessa grew, no longer just ordinary concern, but a desire to protect her, to be her support in her weakest moments. However, the storms of the three people were just a small slice of the chaotic picture of Genoa City. On another front, Chelsea had to face Victor's hidden calculations. Although Adam constantly showed that he had changed, that he truly wanted to protect Chelsea, Victor never let his son be at peace with any woman he could not control. Anonymous messages, veiled warnings, and dangerous business tricks kept appearing one after another, forcing Chelsea to always be on guard. although he tried to trust Adam, his past. With countless times turning his back on the person he loved for the benefit of the family, was always a ghost haunting Chelsea. In the late evenings, when Adam returned to her with a tired look and complicated eyes, Chelsea wondered if she was in love with a man or just a pawn on Victor's chessboard. Adam still tried to prove that he was different, that his love for Chelsea was strong enough to overcome all constraints. However, none of them knew that Victor had secretly come up with a new plan to overthrow the trust that Chelsea had just tried to build. In a city like Genoa City, peace is always a luxury, and loyalty can change in just a moment of weakness. In the following days, the lives of Mariah, Tessa, and Daniel became more and more suffocating. Rumors began to spread, from whispers in coffee shops, prying eyes at work, to even ambiguous status lines on social networks. Everyone had their own opinions. Some blamed Mariah for not knowing how to cherish happiness, others sympathized with Tessa for her prolonged coldness. Daniel also couldn't avoid being targeted, being accused of interfering in other people's families. The three of them were stuck in a vortex of judgment, making every decision that much more difficult. Tessa began to feel guilty towards both of them. She loved Mariah, but at the same time she did not want to hurt Daniel, who had always been there for her when she needed him most. This torment drove Tessa into a state of conflict, not knowing what to choose. She tried to avoid Daniel, but every time she was away from him, the loneliness inside her grew, reminding her of the lack of sincere affection and sharing that Mariah had once brought. During long sleepless nights, Tessa stood by the window, wondering what she was looking for: forgiveness, a new beginning, or simply peace of mind. Mariah, faced with the fact that everything could be lost in the blink of an eye, began to change her behavior. She tried to open up more, actively finding the small habits that had made them happy, such as cooking together, walking in the rain, and reminiscing about old memories. But no matter how hard he tried, the atmosphere could not be as clear as before, because the wound was too deep, the trust was broken. Every time he saw Tessa lost in thought, Mariah felt helpless, not knowing what to do to keep the love that was gradually slipping away from her. Meanwhile, Daniel felt Tessa's change, knew she was trying to get back with Mariah, but still could not stop thinking about her. He struggled with the line between being a good friend and crossing the line, wondering if his feelings were destroying the happiness of others. Daniel began to actively avoid Tessa, spending more time on himself and his personal projects, but the longing still smoldered, unable to be extinguished. This situation continued endlessly, until one stormy night, when all the truth was exposed under the cold lightning of Genoa City. Tessa, unable to bear the weight of her torment, collapsed in front of Mariah, sobbing and confessing her ambiguous relationship with Daniel. Those tears were not only regret, but also a testament to the pain of a heart torn apart by two paths that could not be chosen at the same time. Mariah was silent, pain piled on pain, but for the first time in months, the two dared to face the naked truth, with nothing to hide. The conversation lasted until the next morning, when the rain had stopped but the pain was still intact. The two sat together, saying nothing, just silently looking out the window, knowing that they had to decide either to overcome everything together, or to let go and let each person heal their own wounds. Daniel, even though he was not there, still felt the weight of this decision, understood that he needed to step back so that Tessa could choose her own path. Meanwhile, Chelsea also faced Victor in a ruthless confrontation. The Newman boss put Chelsea in a difficult position, forcing her to choose between her own interests and her loyalty to Adam. The heated arguments, the veiled threats, all aimed at disorienting Chelsea. But this time, Chelsea refused to surrender. She firmly protected Adam, even daring to confront Victor directly, surprising him with her strength and courage. It was that courage that made Adam appreciate and determined to keep his promise, not to let anyone, including his father, hurt the woman he loved. Genoa City has never been peaceful, and no one expected it to be. But it is the emotional storms, the romantic shocks, the falls and the rises that create the true value of this city. Mariah, Tessa, Daniel, and Chelsea, each learns that love is not only about commitment, but also about daring to forgive, to face, to let go when necessary. These challenges can break some couples, but can also forge love to become stronger than ever. In a place where everything changes overnight, faith and courage become the most powerful weapons to help the characters stand firm. The truth is always the light that lights the way, even at the cost of tears, sleepless nights, and irreparable losses. But thanks to that, love in Genoa City has a strong vitality, is capable of overcoming all storms, so that one day, when all wounds have healed, the characters can smile again, continue to believe in a better future for themselves and the people they love. The heavy clouds seemed to foretell a great storm that was silently approaching. In that tense atmosphere, Sharon once again stood in the eye of a legal crisis that seemed to have no way out. If before, she had fallen and then stood up again after many storms, this time, everything seemed darker and heavier because a past that had not yet calmed down was dug up again, drowning all the fragile hopes she had just built. It was thought that Ian Ward's obsessions were just ghosts of the past, but when Chance Chancellor suddenly discovered new evidence, everything was pushed into an uncontrollable spiral. That evidence was not only an important piece connecting Sharon to Ian Ward's evil plots, but also a rope tying her to the abyss of sin, where trust and honor became fragile commodities. Chance, with the instincts of a steadfast policeman and a heart full of justice, could not ignore the gradually revealed truths. He understood that if someone like Ian was still in Genoa City, the safety of many people would be threatened sooner or later. Therefore, when clues about Sharon appeared, Chance was forced to choose between his feelings for the people he loved and his responsibility to protect the truth, even if the price was to push Sharon, a woman who had helped him many times, into the dark corners of society. For Sharon, every passing hour and minute was like torture. Although she still maintained her calm demeanor in front of everyone, deep inside were waves of anxiety, torment, and despair. She knew that with just one small mistake, all her efforts to rebuild her life, rebuild her family and trust in her children would go down the drain. Especially Faith and Mariah, the two daughters who grew up in Sharon's instability, now once again witnessed their mother struggling between the law and gossip. Faith, who was inherently more sensitive and fragile than her sister, was deeply hurt by the constant news appearing on the media and social networks. Her trust in her mother, which had been tested many times, was now even more shaken. For many nights, Faith could not sleep, just sitting blankly by the window, thinking about the simple happy days that had now become so far away. She wondered if her mother was really involved in the crime or just a victim of a larger conspiracy. The greatest pain for Faith was not the truth being revealed, but the helplessness of seeing her mother sink deeper and deeper into the mud, with no one able to pull her up. Mariah, after so many storms with herself, now had to witness her mother facing the abyss. While Faith chose to endure silently, Mariah could not sit still. She tried every way to contact a lawyer, collect information, and even rush into danger just to win a little hope for Sharon. The motherly love that once saved Mariah from her lost days has now become the greatest motivation to keep her from giving up, even though the darkness ahead is thick. But the harder she tries, the more powerless Mariah feels before the power of Ian Ward, a man who always knows how to turn every truth into a tool to destroy others. While Sharon and her daughters are struggling to withstand the storm, in another place, Ian Ward is leisurely enjoying every moment. He is not only satisfied when he sees Sharon cornered, but also takes advantage of every opportunity to expand his influence, tightening the underground network of power in Genoa City. He knows all of Sharon's weaknesses, knows when to strike hard, when to retreat to make his prey fall into despair. That cruel joy does not stop at personal revenge, but also the desire to prove that he can manipulate everyone, even those who seem never to fall. Ian is not alone in this dark game. He is Jordan, a loyal accomplice, but also a double-edged sword, always ready to betray his master when the opportunity arises. Jordan, who used to be the silent one behind the scenes, is now dragged into the eye of the storm when Ian constantly pressures her to collect information about Faith and Mariah to control Sharon. Those secret and risky actions make Jordan sink deeper and deeper into the quagmire of betrayal and fear. She knows that if everything is exposed one day, not only she but also Sharon and other innocent people will be dragged down to the bottom. Where secrets will eventually come to light, where the truth can shatter what seemed the most solid, but also where people who have experienced the storm learn to rise from the ruins, reborn in pain, to believe once again in justice, love and hope. Sharon, whether she has overcome this challenge or not, will forever be a symbol of the strong will of time of the women of Genoa City.